for fresh recruits stood behind the barracks, circling the dog that looked a battered matter. They mocked him, tugged at the worn harness strapped around his chest, treating him like some abandoned training prop left to rust under the desert sun. Did anyone even train this relic? One of them sneered while looping a discarded leash around the dog's neck. Another pried open the animal's jaws to check his teeth, grinning like he'd found proof of weakness. A third slapped the dog's ribcage and called him useless. They figured he was nothing more than a washed-up mutt too scarred to fight, too old to care, too broken to be of use. But less than an hour later, when a live drill ripped across the compound, it wasn't the dog sprawled in the dirt. It was them shaken, speechless, and left wondering the same chilling question: who on earth had trained that dog? And the answer ensured that nobody on that base ever looked at him the same way again. The desert heat shimmered over Camp Redstone's training grounds, bleaching every building and piece of equipment into ghostly shades of white. The air pressed heavy on skin, the kind of heat that clings until your lungs ache. Pull-up bars burned like metal brands, and every boot step kicked up fine dust that hung in suspension. Unwilling to settle dot for rookies from Bravo Squad leaned against a rattling chain-link fence. Their shirts were already soaked with sweat, though morning had barely begun. Fresh out of basic, they carried that misplaced confidence unique to new soldiers believing push-ups and drill practice had prepared them for everything the world could throw. One of them squinted toward the jagged shadow of an old observation tower, its walls still scarred from an accident that had gone unspoken for years. "You see that?" he muttered. "What? The stray?" Another replied, shifting the toothpick in his mouth. The stray lay stretched in the dirt, a Belgian Malinois, large and weathered, scar-lined coat like a topographic map of bad days. One ear was missing a piece at the tip. His harness was so faded it had turned gray from black. Yet he wasn't curled up like a scavenger hoping for scraps. He lay positioned like a sentry, head up, eyes open, body angled as though guarding something only he understood. Looks broken. One of the recruits spat, probably a reject from the K9 unit, too soft to put down, so they just let it hang around. The biggest recruit, shaved head glistening with sweat, let out a snort, and now it thinks this is home. Swagger carried them forward, the kind of confidence that belonged to men who'd never heard live gunfire. The dog tracked their approach with those amber eyes, unflinching. "Sit, boy," the biggest barked, clapping his hands. "Nothing. Maybe it's deaf," another chuckled, "or just too dumb to understand." Still, no response, only that unwavering stare, ribs rising and falling in calm rhythm. A pebble tossed at his flank bounced off without reaction. "See, half dead," one muttered. But the dog wasn't broken. His stillness was deliberate, measured, the quiet calculation of something far sharper than they realized. The following day, they found him again near the kettlebells after morning drills. Same spot, same posture, watching. "Guess he likes the accommodations," one joked. "Maybe this is training," another smirked. "Lesson 1, figure out which mutts are worth feeding." Their laughter echoed until a shadow fell over them. A corporal, lean and weathered, boots grinding gravel with the steady rhythm of someone who learned to survive places where noise could mean death. He didn't address them, didn't scold. He slowed only near the dog, a glance so brief it might have gone unnoticed except one of the recruits caught it. "Hey, Corporal," the recruit called out. "What's with the old mutt?" The man's voice came flat, detached. "Been around longer than any of us." The answer landed heavier than expected, like it carried weight no one could measure. "Failed bomb school." One snickered, waiting for enlightenment. Another chimed in. The corporal turned back, quiet but firm. "None of you ever wonder why he stays?" Silence fell. Nobody answered. The corporal walked on toward the armory, but his words lingered long after his boots faded. That night, under the flicker of fluorescent lights in the admin office, the corporal dug through base records, old files, archived reports. What he uncovered painted a picture darker than any rumor. The dog wasn't a stray. He was MWD for K7, once partnered with a SEAL handler who had died in combat. The animal had been recommended for retirement, even euthanasia, after showing attachment trauma. But the reports missed the truth. This dog had saved dozens of lives, spotted explosives that would have leveled convoys, even dragged soldiers to safety while wounded. One commander had written a note at the bottom of his file. "This dog has more tactical sense than most officers. If his handler falls, someone damn well better look after him. He's earned that much. The system, however, had failed him, marked him as lost, presumed dead, but here he was alive, silent, still serving, on his own terms. Every dawn, before most of the base even thought about rolling out of bed, the dog began his ritual. He would rise from the dirt, shake dust from his coat, and start a silent patrol along the fence line. No handler told him to move. No orders were given. It was instinct, memory, maybe something deeper. Gate guards learned to expect him. Sergeant Herrera, who often pulled night watch, would set a bowl of water near the shack. He never looked directly at the dog, never called his name, just placed it there and muttered, "Morning, ghost," as the animal passed. The patrol always followed the same rhythm. Check the perimeter, nose sweeping the ground, inspect the motor pool for fuel leaks, then station himself by the old tower before the first formations gathered. He wasn't begging. He wasn't lost. He was on duty. Mess hall staff noticed him, too. The cook, Morales, had fed strays for years, but this one, different. He never begged or whined, never pawed at the door. He would simply sit near the dumpsters during chow, waiting patiently until scraps were tossed, then approach with soldierly discipline never before, never too close, never breaking formation. Morales liked to joke that the dog had more self-control than half the recruits who barreled into the line each morning, but others saw something else. Staff Sergeant Blake from Supply swore the animal had a fixation with the mail truck. Twice a week, by clockwork, when the postal van rolled through the gate, the dog positioned himself nearby. He would sit, silent, eyes locked, as if waiting for a letter that was never coming. When the truck left, so did he. Blake had seen veterans do the same thing, waiting for names that would never again appear on envelopes. One afternoon, the recruits decided to escalate their games. The biggest of them brought a stolen leash from the canine kennels. Marine Corps' insignia still etched into the clip. "Time to see if the legend's real," he said, circling the dog with his buddies. The Malinois didn't rise, didn't twitch. His eyes blinked slow, steady, as if bored of the charade. The leash was looped loosely around his neck, more mockery than restraint. Orders were barked at him like parade commands. Sit down. Nothing. A granola bar was waved in front of his nose. The dog's gaze flicked for half a second, then back to neutral. It wasn't disinterest, it was insult. They thought he could be bribed. Hands slapped his flank. Fingers pried his jaws. Someone even tried forcing him into a sit, hands under his belly. That's when he moved. Not quick, not violent. Slow like machinery stirring after years of stillness. He rose to full height. Shoulders square. Body balanced despite his age. A single growl rolled from his throat. Low, steady, final. The recruits froze. Easy, old man. One muttered nervously. The dog did not advance. He did not bare teeth. He simply stared at the one who had grabbed him. A stare long enough, heavy enough to strip away their arrogance. Then, on his own terms, he sat back down. Controlled, unyielding, done entertaining children. The very next morning, chaos slammed into Camp Redstone. Word spread. Divisional command was en route for a surprise inspection. Brass, convoy, security review. The base erupted in controlled panic. Soldiers painted fences, swept cigarette butts, polished anything that could shine. And then came the real problem: an anonymous bomb threat phoned just before the convoy's arrival. The tales were vague, but credible enough to alarm. Explosives hidden where the brass will walk. EOD was half an hour out. The convoy was 20 minutes away. Options were shouted in the briefing room. Lockdown, too slow. Sweep the entire base? Impossible. Then the quiet corporal from the night before stepped forward. "Sir, we have an asset on base. Not conventional, but trained." Eyebrows rose. "What kind of asset?" "Explosive detection. A combat dog. Former SEAL attachment." The commander's face hardened. "You mean that stray?" "Not a stray," the corporal replied. "MWD for K7. 5 deployments. Multiple confirmed IED finds. To Purple Hearts. He knows this better than anyone here." The room went silent. The commander checked his watch. "Convoy is almost at the gate. You've got 5 minutes to prove it." The test was simple. An inert block of training explosive was hidden under sandbags. The dog waited 50 yards away. "Search," the corporal said. No fancy signals. No shouting. The dog's posture shifted instantly. Casual stillness replaced by laser focus. nose, up, then down, pacing in grid lines across the dirt. 30 seconds later, he sat rigid, silent, eyes locked on the sandbags. Perfect textbook alert. The commander's face gave nothing away, but he didn't call it off. They unleashed him across the compound, the path the visiting brass would take. Methodical, professional, 2 hits. The first was a harmless abandoned duffel. The second, hidden beneath a motor pool drainage grate, froze everyone. The dog stiffened. Posture locked. Iod rushed in, a crude pipe bomb, real, functional, set to detonate exactly when the convoy would have rolled past. The base went cold. Every officer in that yard knew the truth. The stray had just saved lives. The commander leaned toward the corporal, voice low. Give me every file on that dog, and from now on, he gets whatever he needs. Food, medical, everything. Consider that an order. The corporal only nodded. Across the yard, the dog had already returned to his station by the tower. Lying in the dust like the moment meant nothing. By evening, rumors were everywhere. Some recruits claimed he had been a SEAL's shadow. Others swore he'd saved men. In firefights that never made it to official reports, the legends grew. But the 4 recruits who had mocked him weren't ready to let go of their pride. They convinced themselves the dog had just been lucky, reflex, coincidence. So they tried again. This time, in front of an audience, they crowded him, tugged at his harness, shoved sunglasses onto his muzzle like a prop. Laughter echoed across the yard until a voice cracked through it like gunfire. Hands off that dog. It was Sergeant Rowe. Broad-shouldered, jaw hard as stone, his stare cut sharper than a blade. He's base cleared. Mission coded. You don't touch him. The recruits froze. Mission coded. The term wasn't thrown around lightly. It meant active clearance. Operational relevance. One dared to ask. Mission coded for what? He doesn't even have a handler. Rowe stepped closer, gravel crunching under his boots. He had a handler. That was all he said. Nothing more. The silence following it weighed heavier than any explanation could. The recruits backed off, unsettled, questions swirling unanswered. The dog didn't move, didn't blink, only watched. That night, without warning, alarms screamed across camp. Red stone, floodlights snapped on. Sirens blared, boots thundered across pavement. The order was clear: surprise drill, simulated sabotage, enemy infiltration. Recruits scrambled into gear, body armor strapped, weapons issued, laser grids and sim ordnance armed. They grinned like it was a video game. Time to show the lifers how it's done. But the dog was there too, silent, stationed at the edge of the mock village, watching. He didn't flinch when charges simulated explosions, didn't blink as smoke grenades filled alleys, just waited, head low, eyes locked. The drill began. First building cleared sloppily, corners missed, mistakes overlooked. Second building turned into disaster. Narrow halls, smoke-choking vision, tripwires missed. One recruit killed by sensors, another down to simulated blast. Panic spread fast. Then, without command, the dog moved. Low stance, ears forward, nose scanning. He stopped at a corridor, growled, then slammed his weight against a wall panel. Click, sirens shrieked, instructors stormed in. They hadn't even known a hidden IED simulation existed in that spot. The recruits would have been wiped out. The dog sat in perfect alert posture, waiting for the next order. In silence that followed, no one laughed. The debrief tent was suffocatingly quiet. Not the usual shuffle of boots or coughs or muttered complaints drew silence. For recruits sat in a line, pale faces streaked with sweat. They weren't talking about missed corners or failed maneuvers. Their focus was fixed on the dog that sat outside, stationed at the entrance as if guarding the meeting itself. Jenkins broke first. Why would he do that? Nobody ordered him. He could have just stayed out of it. He's an animal, muttered Coulter, rubbing a bruise forming on his wrist. What's he even doing here if nobody owns him? From the shadows, Corporal Keene entered the tent. He carried no clipboard, no notes, just the kind of quiet authority that filled space on its own. He looked at the recruits for a long moment before speaking. You want to know why he did it? No one answered, because that's what he was trained to do. The words landed like heavy stone. Trained by who? Another recruit asked, voice wavering. Keene paused, then said the name, Ghost. The dog outside didn't stir, didn't turn his head, just kept scanning the horizon. Keene continued. Feels buried. His handler's gone, but the name stuck. Ghost. That's what he became, present when you need him, invisible when you don't. The recruit shifted, uneasy. Handler. Jenkins pushed, Keen's eyes unfocused, like he was staring at memories he wished he could forget. Navy Special Operations, Urban Recon, some of the best training ever authorized. That dog was schooled in stealth entry, night raids, explosive detection, even advanced marking tactics, hand signals only, no voice commands in the field. He's old. Coulter tried, still grasping for a thread of doubt. 5 deployments. Keen shot back, took shrapnel 3 times, dragged his handler 30 meters under fire, saved an entire squad by absorbing a blast meant to kill them all. Tell me again what old means. Silence thickened. His handler caught friendly. Fire in a night raid. Bad comms, wrong timing. Ghost disappeared after that. No records. Some thought he ran. Others thought he was reassigned. But no paperwork ever followed until one day he showed up here. The recruit sat frozen, finally realizing the truth. Morning rose quiet over the base. No cadence songs, no drills, just the hum of insects and the grind of a lone truck at the depot. Ghost sat near the PT field, facing east. He wasn't at attention. He wasn't lounging, just present, body angled like he was guarding something unseen. The recruits approached differently this time. No swagger, no mockery. Their boots crunched softer against gravel. Coulter looked exhausted, shadows under his eyes. Jenkins kept glancing around, nerves raw. The youngest among them finally stepped forward, slow, careful. He stopped 6 feet from Ghost and knelt, not to command, not to tease, but to ask permission. He extended his palm, open and empty. Ghost studied him for a long moment, then, with quiet purpose, lowered his muzzle and pressed it gently against the recruit's hand. No tail wag, no sound, just contact, a soldier's acknowledgement. The recruit nodded once, then stood back. One by one, the others approached. Some laid hands briefly on the dog's scarred coat. Others just stood near him, heads bowed in respect. The laughter was gone. The arrogance burned away. What remained was recognition. This wasn't a mascot. This wasn't a stray. This was a veteran. Across the yard, Corporal Kane and Sergeant Rowe watched. Rowe sipped coffee from a battered thermos. Think they got the message. Kane didn't. Look away. Real respect doesn't need to bark. It waits until you figure it out. The sun cleared the horizon. Ghost rose, shook dust from his fur, and began his patrol along the fence line. Nose down, ears forward, purpose steady as ever. Not for orders, not for recognition, but because that was what he had always done. The recruits stepped aside, unprompted, clearing his path. They didn't salute. They didn't call after him. They simply watched. And in that moment, they finally understood they were in the presence of a soldier whose service had outlasted everyone's expectations. And so the legend of Ghost remained. A dog discarded for ceremony, to discipline for pity. He never asked for recognition, never demanded rank or medal. He just carried on, day after day, serving a mission no one had written down, but everyone could feel. And now the question lingers, not just for those recruits, not just for Camp Redstone, but for anyone who hears his story. Would you have walked past him too, laughing at the old mutt lying in the dust? Or would you have stopped, wondered, and realized what it meant when a soldier never truly stood down? Because here's the truth. Not all veterans wear uniforms. Some walk on for legs. Carrying scars just the same should combat dogs who served. Alongside special forces be honored as the veterans they are. Or does loyalty only matter when it belongs to human skin? Drop your thoughts below. Every comment matters. If this reminded you that courage doesn't always walk on 2 legs, share it with someone who understands what real service looks like. And remember, Ghost may be just one story, but there are countless more. Heroes who never asked for medals, who never sought applause, who just served until the mission was done.